Welcome to Voice for Infection Prevention, where we explore the latest developments, challenges, and insights in the field of infection prevention and control. With a passion for promoting patient safety and healthcare excellence, we're excited to bring you engaging discussions with experts, leaders, and innovators in the field. So whether you're a seasoned professional or just beginning your journey in infection prevention, welcome to the conversation. This is Voice for Infection Prevention.
Welcome back to Voice for Infection Prevention. Today I'm joined by Sarah Wilkerson, whose career path proves that unexpected opportunities can lead to incredible growth. Sarah started as a veterinarian technician before moving into nursing education, planning to become a nurse educator. But when she was unexpectedly offered an infection prevention role, she jumped in and never looked back. Now she oversees infection prevention across 52 facilities spanning acute care, ambulatory, and rehab settings. In this conversation, we discuss her career progression, the importance of mentorship, and how diverse backgrounds strengthen infection prevention teams. She also shares her experience stepping into system-wide leadership just as COVID-19 hit, and how she advocates for staffing and resources. If you're looking for insights on career growth, leadership, and the evolving role of infection preventionist, you won't want to miss this one. Let's dive in.
This episode is sponsored by Clutch Recruitment, the leading recruiting firm in the country, recruiting exclusively within infection prevention and control.
All right. Thank you for doing this for us. But let's just hop right in. I want to know, I guess most everybody I've talked to kind of fell into infection prevention. That's kind of the funny phrase that we have going on. So I'm curious, how did you end up discovering this as a field?
Yeah, that's exactly it. I like the fell into it. That's a good way to say it. So I fell into infection prevention as I was working at an ambulatory center where I was working as an operating room nurse, and then started to work as an educator for the facility. And the infection preventionist was moving into a new role. And the director of the surgery center at that time said, "Hey, we think you'd be really good for this job. And I think that you start tomorrow." And so I had to really switch gears quickly and the mindset. But I think my background with already working in the facility, already having good connections really helped me to move into that position a little bit easier, I think, than maybe somebody else. So it was a challenge from day one, that's for sure. But definitely got that tap on the shoulder. And oh, by the way.
Nice. So let me ask you this. I want to take a step back. So it looks like you actually got a bachelor's of, now you had an associate's in nursing, which is great. And then you went and got a bachelor's of science in animal sciences. So what happened to allow you into a hospital working with people?
Yeah, that's great. So I was a veterinary technician for many, many years, and was really looking for something new. Had a couple of things happen in my life that really brought, just healthcare in general into a little bit more light for me. And a little bit more experience. And so decided to go back into nursing as a second career, and really had the intention that I was going to become a teacher for nursing students, and really had a passion with teaching. So that was how I originally got into nursing.
Gotcha.
And then went on to get my master's in nursing.
Oh, wow. When did you get your master's degree?
About, I want to say 11 years ago.
Okay. And then was that after you got into the infection prevention kind of career?
It was, so I was working as an educator in the OR for the teams, and really wanted to be able to build that expertise in becoming an educator, and also looking at leadership skills. So that's how I got into the master's. Excellent. So I hadn't gotten into infection prevention yet.
Okay. And that was a master's in nursing, is that right?
Yeah, master's in nursing, yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. So you started off in ambulatory, it sounded like. So you got kind of nudged into the role. Did you know what you were getting yourself into?
A little bit. The person who had been in the role previously, we were good friends and we shared an office previously.
Okay.
So I got to hear a lot of the questions that she got asked. I got to be a sounding board for her when there were situations that came up, especially from the operating room side. So I had a bit of an idea, but I also knew that it could be a challenge to break through to some teams as an infection preventionist. So I think that was maybe helpful knowing that going in, that
Okay.
I would have to build some strong relationships early on.
Gotcha. And then were you a sole preventionist at the time?
Yep, I was a
Okay.
soul. So I
Okay.
had a mentor that worked at the hospital that when I was new in the role, I could call up and say, "Help me! What do I do about this situation?" We called it the big house because we were in
There you go.
ambulatory. But yeah, that really fostered a good relationship and somebody that I could, reach out to when I was having a challenge.
Okay. And then tell me, when did you feel comfortable in the role? I mean, when did you feel, I guess, confident providing answers and kind of accepting the fact that you were the point person now?
Yeah, I would say probably a good year. Anytime I've transitioned through my career, I think it takes about a good year before you really start to have your routine and you know what resources are available and you don't feel like you have to look up everything every time. You can actually
Yeah.
answer the question instead of saying, "Let me get back to you."
Yep.
So, yeah, I would say about a good year. But I mean, every day, even now, I get questions that I have to take a pause and do my research on. So I don't think that
Yeah.
ever goes away.
Gotcha. And then at what point, I mean, at some point you got your certification in infection control. When was that in your timeline?
Yeah, so I transitioned from ambulatory to acute care, and it was part of my job offer that I had to become certified within a certain period of time. So that kind of pushed me into it. But definitely certification is a great way, just to have um, that clarity for somebody that's asking you a question. They can feel a little bit more confident that you have that foundational knowledge and expertise to be able to, provide an answer. It gives you a little more clout. So
Gotcha.
definitely was worth it. I might have wanted a little bit more time to have prepared for it.
Yeah.
But definitely something I was certainly interested in pursuing.
Gotcha. And then how long were you in that the ambulatory role?
The ambulatory role, I think about 4 years before I moved to acute care.
Okay. And then it looks like you jumped into a manager role in acute care. Did you have people reporting to you, or was that another sole preventionist?
Yeah, I did. At that time, it was a nice transition. It was from a different facility than my first facility that I worked at in acute care. But the infection preventionist manager that was at that facility um, actually ended up being that mentor that I was telling you about at the very
Okay.
beginning.
Yeah.
So she had been trying to recruit me to come to their facility for years. I want to say about 6 years. And finally everything lined up and it looked like, now's the time I want to come and work with you. And she was retiring, and so she spent about a year and a half grooming me and getting me ready for that manager position. So
Okay.
that was fantastic. And at the time that I started in the manager role, I just had one direct report, and then ended up expanding the program and had 4 direct reports by the time I left that position.
Okay. Excellent. And then, and I may have missed it, but did you spend any time in acute care before being put into that manager role?
Oh yeah, yeah. I had worked in
Yeah.
acute care. I want to say another couple of years before I moved into management. Yeah.
Okay. Well, talk to me for a minute about the transition between ambulatory into the short-term acute care. On the recruiting end, there's always not as much now.
Yeah.
Things seem to have changed a bit, but especially years ago, there was a lot of hesitation to hire somebody out of ambulatory
Mhm.
because they didn't quite understand what was going on. That's just not what they were looking for. So I'm curious to hear your transition between ambulatory to short-term. Was it a smooth transition for you, or was it quite a bit of a learning curve, or
It
what do
was
you?
a huge learning curve. I think it did help that I had a nursing background. So I did have some experience, from when I was in nursing school and to rely on. But it was a pretty big jump moving from ambulatory into acute care. There's some things that are, similar, like if you think about construction and medication safety and hand hygiene. Also, the fact that I was coming from a surgery center, I had the peri-op background and understood SPD. Those are pretty big buckets that infection preventionist has to work with, and if you don't understand that, that's an even bigger, kind of stepping into that can be even more overwhelming. So the fact that I had that right off the bat was helpful to rely on. The team that I was moving into did not have somebody that had that experience. So I was able, at least at that point, to provide some insight for them. And then they could teach me about the other things. So it was a good combination.
Excellent. So when you first moved into the short-term acute care, did you have a team you were working with there, or was it
Yeah,
just you
there
and the
was,
manager?
I
Or?
think, 3 other infection preventionists on the team at that time, and
Okay.
a data analyst.
Excellent. Okay. All right. And then you said, I mean, they kind of spotted you for the manager position a while before, but they kind of groomed you into that role. How did you prepare yourself for a management role? I mean, you had worked with team, but a lot of people say that infection prevention in particular, management skills kind of gets overlooked for a minute, and then it's just kind of thrown on you when you get
Yeah.
the title. So I'm curious, how did you prepare yourself, or did you feel prepared when you moved into the manager role?
I would say a little bit of both. I did take some leadership courses that our facility provided in anticipation of moving into the management role, and that kind of had the foundational elements that a new leader would need. And then since I did have overlap with the prior manager, she was able to push me into certain situations where I had more exposure with like senior leadership. We had a kind of a special pathogens type unit. So I was, and that was a passion that I had. So she really pushed me to own that process and really push that forward. So she gave me lots of opportunities to build some of that leadership skills. I think the hardest transition, of course, is moving into being a people leader and having somebody that's reporting to you, and now they're relying on you to, help them with questions that they're having, barriers that they're having, and then helping them if we need to escalate concerns. So I would say that's probably was the hardest part, was that converting to that element of leadership versus some of the other portions.
Yeah. And I'm assuming here, but maybe not. But when did you get involved with APIC at all, or what was when did you first start doing local chapters and then
Yeah.
national things?
I got involved with APIC as soon as I moved into infection prevention. I joined the local chapter, and of course, at that time we met in person, and got to meet up about once a month, and that was a fantastic outlet as a new infection preventionist, especially as a sole practitioner, because I could create those relationships with other people that were doing the same thing that I was. And, we could ask each other, like, hey, what are you doing about this situation? And, or you just need to vent and have somebody that understands what you're dealing with, and they could do that. And so really allowed me to build a network that I still use, today. and was moved into more of a position within our local chapter within a couple of years. I'm now a past president of the chapter and have been on the board for years. Really feel that that it's important to be involved with APIC. They just have so many resources. And then, of course, can't go to the conference every year, but every time I have an opportunity to, I try to. Again, just that networking is invaluable. So really has been something that I would recommend for anybody going into infection prevention, is to get involved and get involved early.
Yeah. And it doesn't seem, and like I said, I'm just looking at your resume here, but it doesn't seem like you were in the management role too long before COVID hit. So I'm curious as to, were you at all ready for that? Or was that, I don't know that anybody was ready for that, but how was that trying to making a transition into management at the same time as a kind of crisis is going on?
Yeah, I think I was in the role about a month before COVID hit. And our facility had the first patient. So we got COVID from the very beginning, and I will never forget that the night that I got that call. So it definitely changed my perspective of things that needed to occur promptly. We had to stop everything else and really look at what did we know about the disease, what did we know about how to protect ourselves from it, and then how do we get that information to our teams so that we keep our patients and our staff safe. Just right from the get-go.
Yeah, goodness, I can't imagine. But okay, so you obviously got through that, and then it looks like you took a regional director job not too long after that, a couple of years maybe. So tell me about that. So I assume you're over multiple hospitals at that point?
Yeah, at that time, let's see, I think I had 6 facilities that were spread across 2 states. I had worked with all of the facilities previously because it was the hospital that I was working at was part of that same region. So that was a nice transition because I knew all of the people. Again, in that role, the person that was leaving did the little tap on the shoulder. Hey, I think you'd be good for this. I'm checking out, but I think you'd do good. I certainly didn't think I was ready for that kind of a jump, but said, all right, I'll give it a try, and have really just enjoyed that. Bringing the teams together across different facilities across 2 states was really enjoyable.
Yeah. Tell me how much different that is. I know there's a lot of people that you talk to that kind of miss the frontline work. And then some people are able to still do that a little bit, but how was that for you? Were you able to do it? Do you thrive in this kind of more executive role, or do you miss more of the frontline work?
Yeah, I definitely need a little bit of balance. I enjoy looking at the big picture, and moving into a regional division executive role, you do have to look at that larger picture, and you have to be thinking more strategically about what we need to do to make a big change. But I definitely miss the day-to-day stuff. So I really enjoy it when the team reaches out with a question or an issue, and they're like, gosh, I've just tried, everything. What else could we possibly do? And if I don't know the answer, a lot of times I do know somebody that they have gone through a similar issue that I can point them in that direction. And so it's been challenging in different ways, of course, having that bigger mindset, but I do still enjoy very much going into the hospitals and the facilities and getting to do the boots on the ground work too. I really do enjoy that still.
That's good. And you weren't really in that position long before you got another promotion up to, so was that another just kind of nudge, or did you have to?
Yeah, one of those where we didn't ever, I never expected that position to open. And it was like, well, why not? I might as well try. All they could say is no, but it's good experience either way. If you have the opportunity to interview, you get an understanding of what they're looking for, what kind of questions they ask. It gives you that, experience to rely on next time. And so,
Yeah.
I just had a thought, now I might as well try it and see what happens.
Okay. And that was an executive director. And again, it was only another year before you got bumped up to more of a system executive. What was that a new position, or was that just a different title, or how did that next step come about?
Yeah. So the kind of the role that I had between the region and the system role was what they called a division role. That was a brand new role. It was restructuring of the organization, and so that was a new position. The executive role was the one that I was referring to when
Gotcha.
I didn't expect the person to leave, and then they got a great opportunity. They couldn't pass up, and decided to throw my hat in the ring for that one.
No, that's great. Okay, so how many hospitals now do you have, and how many? And I know you won't know this number by heart, but how many roughly people do you have that report up to you, even if it's indirectly?
Yeah. So 52 facilities, acute care, critical access, long-term care, surgery, and rehab type facilities. And then, of course, we have tons and tons of ambulatory clinics as well. The infection prevention team, I have a smaller team that directly reports to me now, and then a few that are dotted lines. But I would say we have somewhere in 100, 150 infection preventionists across the organization that would all roll up to me.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right. So you're now in a role to where you're putting teams together and whatnot. So I'm curious your philosophy on this. And again, it's a question that I've asked everybody, but early on, it was pretty much exclusively nurses. That seems to be changing quite a bit. So I'm curious if you could kind of map out an ideal team. I mean, who would you have in those roles? I mean, are you a all nurse person? Are you a diverse team? I guess what backgrounds in particular do you like?
Yeah, I think it is very important to have a diverse team. There is a place for nursing, because nursing has a great, the clinical mindset, and they can provide invaluable information in that sense. But I think having somebody with a laboratory background is very helpful. Being able to just help us understand what the heck we're looking at when we have a lab result. And how can we, maybe think about utilizing the laboratory to our advantage when we have a challenge or an issue. I think having somebody with a public health background can be very helpful as well. They have a different perspective and really thinking about the community as a whole, not just our facility. And then I'm trying to think, we've had really good success with different providers who have come from other countries who do not have a medical degree in the US, but they have that clinical background and in another country. That we've had really good success with having somebody like that on the team as well, having that provider, mindset. And then, we've had other folks that have no background at all in healthcare, who are just really eager to join infection prevention and have a unique background in something we may not have thought about. I've had some folks that have come from this is healthcare, but respiratory therapy. We've had teams come from, I'm trying to think what her background was now. She was like an exercise scientist. Wow. Just not something that you would have thought right off the bat, but I'm all about giving people a chance. And if they are a good fit for our team from a personality standpoint, we can train them. So I'm all about the best fit and having a diverse group that's going to bring us, different ways of thinking about things. Really, so we get those outside of the box ideas.
And I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit with this question.
Yes.
Maybe a difficult one to answer, but Obviously you came in with the nursing background, which was tremendously helpful to you. But obviously your team's filled with a ton of different backgrounds. Obviously in infection prevention, there's always something for somebody to learn.
Yeah.
Whether it's non-nursing learning the clinical piece or the clinical side learning some of the science behind everything. Do you have an opinion on which is a more difficult learning curve to get over?
I mean, having not been in one of the other roles coming into infection prevention, that's kind of a hard question to ask. But I mean, even with my own background and being nursing, I had a very specific type of nursing background. So even moving from, working in the operating room to acute care, on the floor, bedside nursing is completely different. So even for me, that was a big jump. So I think with everyone, the different backgrounds, I would say not having any healthcare background is a harder jump to move into infection prevention, just because you're not necessarily used to the terminology. You're not necessarily used to how to look at an electronic medical record. Some of those skills that you're going to have to learn right off the bat. Another place where I've seen it be challenging for people is just not having some of the technology skills, like using Excel and Microsoft. Those are things that we use every single day. And so that can be a really big learning curve too, if people don't have that background. So I think it's just a little bit different depending on where you're coming from. What's going to be your biggest challenge?
Yeah, that's a great answer. And tell me this, you talked about personality being a big thing. So I'm curious as to, and I'm sure you've sat on your fair share of interviews and talked to plenty and seen plenty of infection preventionists grow in their career. But what do you look for as far as the personality traits or skill sets to where you can really point and know, like, okay, that's going to make for a good IP?
Yeah.
I guess, and let me go a step further. Do you have any questions that you ask that help you identify those things as well?
So to start with the first part of your question, things that I'm looking for is I want them to have done their homework. I want them to know what infection prevention is, even if they don't have any experience. I want them to at least understand, have looked at the APIC website, understand what an infection preventionist, just a basic understanding of what they do. I want them to be curious. If they don't ask me any questions, that's a red flag. Yeah. I want them to be super, engaged. I'm looking for somebody who, has a positive mindset, who doesn't look like they're bored to be there, that I feel like I'm having a conversation with, instead of that they're being punished because they're there to have an interview. So, some of those types of things. And then as far as questions that I like to ask, I mean, I have quite a few things that I try to ask them about, but I do ask them, what do you like? I kind of just try to learn about them personally. What do you like to do in your free time when you're not at work, and what really brings you joy in the workplace?
Very cool. Very cool. And I imagine, and I don't know this, I'm going blind here, but obviously you've got a lot of involvement in APIC, but do you have any other extracurricular stuff that you've done that's just kind of helped your professional career? Like, have you been involved in publications, or do you try to do any presentations or posters or anything? What have you done, or what would you recommend that people kind of do additionally to their day-to-day work?
Yeah, I mean, especially if there's any interest in becoming a fellow of APIC, getting in on a research project early is a great idea. I mean, it takes such a long time to get things moving. But anytime there was an opportunity to present at our local chapter, I, raised my hand and said, yeah, I'd like to do that. So I've had quite a few opportunities to do that over the years. Other organizations like AORN, I was able to do some presentations there. During COVID, just with everything that we learned, I was able to present to an organization around ergonomics and healthcare safety. And so that was kind of fun to think about doing that. And then most recently was able to do a presentation that really looked at teams who are part of environmental services and healthcare engineering. So that was pretty fun and different audience than I'd presented to. Certainly have tried to get some abstracts out there at National APIC. I've been successful a couple of times. I really want to present at National APIC, but I haven't had the chance quite yet. So it's still on my list of things to check off. And then as far as research project goes, I actually was able to join an anesthesia team that was interested in working on a project. And they said, hey, do you want to help us with this? And sure, that sounds great. So that was how I was able to get in and help with that. And then again, during COVID and our response to that, we were able to get some publications out around that as well. So we do so many things every single day that if you can just have that in the back of your mind whenever you can, that is this something that people might want to know about? And it's not just the stuff that you're successful with, it's the stuff that you fail at too, that people want to know about, so they can learn from, the things that you encountered and have, maybe think about tackling it another way. So yeah, I'm constantly pushing our teams to think about that. And we actually just had one of our teams present on how to submit an abstract to APIC, thinking about, usually about December is the time that they start asking for that. And so really want to try to encourage our teams to try and expand on that side.
No, that's great. And taking a step back, I want to think kind of big picture for a second. When you, and maybe it's back when you first got into infection prevention, but I'm curious, was there any, and you had the blessing of kind of sharing an office with somebody that was doing it, so maybe you weren't quite as surprised as others, but I'm sure there's always surprises that wow, that's my responsibility too, or that's something I haven't thought about. But what was the biggest thing, particularly early on in your career, where you were like, wow, I just never realized that this would be considered my scope of work?
I always tell new people that are interviewing that are thinking about infection prevention that everything within and right outside of the facility is under the IP's purview. I mean, the scope is massive. I never imagined that I would one, have to think about construction or water in the facility. I don't know how many times I've gotten to put on a hard hat and walk through a construction site. Totally unexpected. Other things like, I'm trying to think, housekeeping, the in and outs of pretty much every role in the facility, and having to understand what their, where they fall within the health care organization and what their role is in infection prevention. Just had no idea how many different types of work groups that we would have to work and coordinate with. Yeah, I would say our engineering and facilities teams, working really closely with them. If you have a good relationship with them, they're going to tell you about stuff early on before it becomes a problem that you have to come to the facility in the middle of the night or on the weekend. So that's a super important relationship to build. Usually have them on speed dial. I would say our housekeeping teams and our sterile processing teams, really helping them understand what an important role they play in everything. I mean, it starts with them. If they don't disinfect the instrumentation or the surfaces appropriately, then we're already, starting from behind. So they're super important. Of course, our nursing teams, ensuring that they're delivering the direct patient care. And so if they really understand the rationale for the things that we're asking them to do, they're going to be a lot more interested in participating. And really also just asking them like, hey, this is what we need to do, but how do we get there? How do we make it easy for you to do what you need to do? Of course, like our quality teams, we're constantly looking at the data together and making sure that we're trying to, display the data in a meaningful way so that whoever we're sharing it with understands what we're trying to, get across to them. I would say those are the primary groups that I work with probably every day. And supply chain. Supply chain is the other one, materials management and supply chain, especially through COVID and now with the IV fluid shortages. I mean, they really play a big role in making sure we have the supplies that we need to do our work.
Gotcha. And then we're coming close on time, so I want to kind of close off with one. It's not even really a question, but I want to open the floor up a little bit for you to speak to people that are entertaining a career, maybe that have just gotten started in it. But just curious if you have any sort of encouragement or insight to share with them, just to motivate them to kind of stay in it and stay encouraged in the field.
Yeah, so somebody who's starting fresh, I think getting involved with your local APIC chapter, finding that networking group that you can start asking questions to. APIC has a lot of really great resources for sole practitioners now that they didn't have previously. So I think if you're in that role where you're by yourself, find your friends. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're always going to be other infection preventionists, but it might be your, quality person in the facility, or maybe even a nursing leader. Just finding that person that you can, really try to bounce ideas off of and make sure you're on the right track. And then I think working on your professional development is super important. So using the roadmap to make sure that you're continuing to learn about things that maybe are outside of your daily scope. Really trying to find those opportunities where you can build your practice, especially, as you prepare for certification. And then as you look to, longer down the road in your career, how can you mentor others? So as a new person, trying to find that group and that you can rely on, those resources that you can count on. And then later in your career, I think it's looking at how do you build up the new team that's coming in, and how do we be the mentor for them.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Voice for Infection Prevention. We hope you found our discussions informative and insightful. Remember to subscribe to our podcast for more conversations with experts in the field, and don't forget to leave us a review to let us know what you think. For additional resources and to stay updated on the latest news in infection prevention, visit our website at voiceforip.com. Thank you again for listening. Until next time, stay safe and continue your commitment to excellence in infection prevention.